Alright, so in case you guys are just joining, Tales from the Shadows. These are short stories on the Final Fantasy XIV Lodestone website. I can give you guys a link. I will, if you'd like it. And we're going to read through them. Apparently they're lore heavy. They're going to tie in with what we've seen. So it's an exciting read. And yeah, Corelda. Shadowbringers' main story was fantastical. That's actually why I'm doing this right now. Because the story was so good and it left me wanting more. And this is apparently quite a whole lot more. And I want to read especially this one with Emmett Salkin right now while it's still fresh in my mind. Our first visit to Amarot. Which was, again, just, I feel like I need to say this one more time. Magical. That city. Wow. Wow. So, we're going to start with one name, one promise. I hope this isn't too hard to read, because I'm not really very good at reading. We're just going to give it a go. In this den of pirates and thieves, those who cast the darkest shadows are wont to wear white. Helps them blend in, disappear into the streetscape. In that sense, I reckon you were born for this line of work. So the man mused indifferently as he grabbed at the small boy's silver locks. They were not father and son, nor blood relatives of any sort, just a child who knew no life but that on the streets, and a merchant of ill repute who was all too eager to employ the urchin in one shady scheme after the next. Business partners. Nothing more. It was a different time, back in the days before Admiral Merlwyb forbade piracy and brought a measure of order back to Limsa. In that lawless place, a street rat could do worse for allies than a black marketeer of questionable moral fiber. Needless to say, some patrons were bad, while others were worse. Allow yourself to be lured in by the promise of easy coin, and you might find yourself with a cutlass to your chin. There was but one constant. Once the job was done, both parties moved on, sometimes without so much as a fare thee well. And thus, Thancred spent his formative years. For better or worse, he was an apt pupil, agile of body and sharp of mind. He could take care of himself, and gave the dangers that lurked at every turn a suitably wide berth. At one point, he even managed to ingratiate himself with the dutiful sisters, keepers of the code, feared even by the most fearsome buccaneers, and yet, in the end, he chose to move on. There was something about them, the quiet passion, the pride they took in their work, that never sat right with a boy. It was by no means a glamorous life, nor less an easy one, but it was the only life he knew. That is, until the day he took it into his head to ply his trade on the piers. Word had it that a trader was arriving from across the sea, and coin purses would be flush with gil and ripe for the taking. An elderly Elizan, whom he chose as his mark, had other ideas, however. No sooner had the boy lifted a hand than he had found himself on his back, his limbs bound by powerful magics. A short life in jail beckoned, or perhaps a quick death. And then the strangest thing happened. The man took him by the hand, led him to a quiet corner away from the bustling crowds, looked him straight in the eye and said, "My name's Louis Choix, Levoyeur. I'm a scholar from across the seas. What's your name, child?" "Thancred," the boy mumbled in disbelief. "Thancred what?" "Have you any family?" the old man continued, with a sympathetic smile. "Just Thancred," the boy shrugged. "And I don't have a family, at least not one that I know of." The man who had called himself Louis Choix paused for a moment, stroking his beard, before appearing to come to a conclusion. "You are quick and able beyond your years. Were you in a place where you could learn to use these gifts for the good of all, rather than merely as tools for your own survival, why, there's no telling what life you might lead." Thancred listened in silence, his frown speaking volumes. "It's not as if I chose this, you know." But Louis Choix responded with a sad, yet knowing smile, and the words that would change the boy's life forever. "Come with me to Charlayan. You're a gifted child, and there's much that I would teach you." And so it was that Thancred's new life began. To commemorate this occasion, Thancred was to claim the surname of Waters. Such flourishes had been unnecessary on the Livingston streets, but would be indispensable in more respectable locales. Thancred chafed at first, not keen to declare his lowly heritage to all and sundry, but Master Louis would brook no opposition. Thaliak, guardian of Gushing Rivers and purveyor of knowledge, the sage mused. A lad such as yourself could do far worse for a protector, and so Thancred grudgingly accepted the name he would come to wear with pride. Louis also found a suitable mentor for the child, an old hand in covert operations who had trained Thancred to follow his printless footsteps. Sharlayan was a society that valued knowledge and expertise in all forms, and the shadowy agents were not shunned as disreputable rogues, but respected as key contributors to the nation. It was in such capacity that Louis hoped the boy might excel and find his true calling. Stunned as he was at this turn of events, Thancred was no fool. He understood the future Louis envisioned for him, and endeavored to do all he could to meet his patron's expectations. He honed his body that he might infiltrate the most impregnable strongholds in the harshest of environments, and his mind that he might charm the wariest merchants and socialites in the most critical of circumstances. Before he knew it, the streetwise child of the Laminson alleyway was no more. In his place stood a confident youth who could yet pose as anyone's friend and confidant long enough to procure knowledge his client demanded. A short while later, Thancred's surpassing skills were recognized, and upon his skin was inscribed the Sigil of Arkhan. When Louis gazed upon the mark, he could scarce contain his joy. The boy he had personally led out of penury and taken under his wing had realized his potential. It was about this time that Thancred met the child he knew only as Asilia. One of the first recruits to Master Louis' Circle of Knowing, he was on a top-secret mission in Uldar, tasked with doing what he could to quell the flames of war that threatened to engulf Eorzea. To his acquaintances, he was simply a traveling bard hoping to hone his skills and study swordplay in this land of gladiators and mercenaries. In truth, his mission was to use his knowledge of the Primals as a bargaining chip, that he might gain the trust of the Syndicate, the Sultana, and any others who wielded influence over this land, overflowing with wealth and intrigue, in the hope that he might stave off, however briefly, the threat of warlike Garlemald. But the best-laid plans of men oft go awry, and it was not long until tragedy reared its ugly head, and the child Thancred had only just befriended was consigned to a crueler fate than even he had known. As the dust settled, the young girl clung to her father, pleading for the gods, with the gods for him to remain a moment longer. Part of him was keenly aware that the child was all alone now, as he had once been. This part pitied her, knowing she would be forced to sacrifice to survive in this cruel and unfeeling world. Yet another part of him, a more selfish part, he would admit, seethed with pain and regret. As much as he had grown, as strong as he had become, in the end he was powerless. I failed her when she needed me most. Fortunately, the child was not without friends in the world. The songstress Flamen soon resolved to serve as her guardian and protector, and so Thancred's role in the child's story came to an end. Or seemed as if it might, but for reasons he struggled to explain, he couldn't let go so easily. Perhaps it was the knowledge that the child's father had betrayed his Garlean spy masters before his death, and that danger still followed in his wake. Or perhaps it was something far simpler, though the former made for a convenient excuse. Needless to say, he had many more important responsibilities. Hey. Wow. That is a long nickname. Amaryllis? Nightbloom. I think I nailed it. What up, man? Thanks for following the channel. Thank you so much. Okay. Where were we? Needless to say, he had more important responsibilities. Nevertheless, whenever his duties brought him to Uldar, he'd make sure to look in on Asilia, lest she get caught up in anything unsavory. Dispatching common louts was easy enough, but on those occasions he found himself face to face with an undercover Garlean operative, no doubt one who had followed her father's trail, shivers ran down his spine. When it became clear that it would be nigh on impossible to shake their trail, Thancred decided to step forth from the shadows and make a proposition. You should take on a new name and assume a new life. Only then might you free yourself from your father's legacy. Trust me, it's for your own good. Cecilia looked into his eyes and considered the implication of his words, without prejudice. After a moment she nodded in agreement. Very well. But what name shall I take? Thancred closed his eyes. Thought briefly for a moment, then spoke. Minfilia, he said, with quiet conviction. Minfilia Ward. Was nearly as inspired a name as the one Louisoix had convinced him to embrace so many years ago. A common enough name for a Highlander girl, yet not one so overused as to draw unnecessary attention. A name that he thought would keep her safe in Thancred's absence. Minfilia, she said with a smile. Yes, I rather like the sound of it. I'm so glad I got the name right. It stresses me out. If anything ever stresses me out, it's long names without capitalization. One night after seeing to some reconnaissance task or other, Thancred found himself aimlessly wandering the streets of Uldar, as he was wont to do. It was there that he spotted Minfilia, sporting a pickaxe and other assorted gear. The girl is nothing if not devoted to the cause. Is something the matter? He asked. Surely your tasks didn't require you to stay out quite so late. Oh, Thancred, Minfilia responded calmly. It's nothing, really. I simply got distracted. For all her outward projection of strength, something was clearly weighing on the girl's mind, and so Thancred flashed an understanding smile and offered to escort her home. It wasn't far to the humble abode where she lived with Flamen, and he hoped that he might learn more of her troubles. The conversation quickly turned from that topic to the rumors of the day. Several inconsequential laughs later, they arrived at their destination. Thank you, Thancred, Minfilia offered, before fixing him with a look. Do take care not to overdo it at the tavern. You are too quick to forget yourself, especially in the company of women. I'll heed your advice. As if my very life depended on it, Thancred replied, in a tone that made it clear that he had no intention of doing anything of the sort. Minfilia sighed as she pushed the wooden door open. For a moment, the warm, orange-hued glow of the lanterns within bathed the alley and Thancred in the light. With a farewell wave, the girl stepped inside, and as the door closed behind her with a creak, that fleeting glimpse of warmth and tranquility vanished along with her. From beyond the threshold, 1,000 malms away, came a gentle voice. Welcome home, my dear. Alone in the alley, Thancred took a deep breath. It's not for you. He had seen the girl safely home. And though it had been a simple task, he felt prouder than he had in a long, long time. Minfilia the Miner, dude. God, I love it. How many years has it been? Thancred had long since lost count. He pondered the memory as he delved deeper into the tunnels beneath the city of Yulmore in the first. Oh my god, here we are. We're in the present. Quite literally, a world away from home. Just as he had been many times in his younger days. He was here on a mission to rescue a young girl. The streets of Yulmore were lined with soaring, majestic buildings carved from pristine white marble. Though there were many differences, of course, Thancred could not help but be reminded of Limsa Lominsa. In this den of pirates and thieves, those who cast the darkest shadow are wont to wear white. He had shed the Yulmoran soldier's garb that he had worn to gain entry, donning instead his own coat of purest white. His garments were light and flowing, befitting a man who traded his daggers for a gunblade, a man resolved to serve as a guardian and protector. The white, too, was Thancred's choice, a color that would allow him to travel unmarked in this world flooded with light. That's actually really smart, and I'd never considered that. Were he an honorable knight, burning with a sense of duty, no doubt he would have chosen to clad himself in black, raising high the villain's flag, in a land where despots draped themselves in the mantle of virtue. But such indulgences would have to wait until after he had saved her. The reef from which the city of Yulmore was carved extended far below the surface of the ocean. The massive subterranean chamber in which Thancred found himself was said to have been used as a storehouse in one age, and as a safe haven to shelter people from sin-eaters in another. Under the rule of Lord Vorthri, it had been converted into a makeshift jail and pantry for mule. the substance that served to provide sustenance to the citizens of Yulmore and to secure their loyalty. It was the deepest chamber of those cavernous halls that Thancred sought, a location he had identified after only a few months of reconnaissance. He evaded the eyes of the watchmen, painlessly and effortlessly dispatching those whom he deemed might interfere with their escape. We on his own, infiltrating the most heavily guarded areas of Yulmore would be a simple task, but to spirit away a prisoner, a child, who knew nothing of the battlefield, no less, he would need to take every precaution. After disposing of yet another guard, Thancred arrived at his destination. Though his allies in the first called her Minfilia, the Exarch had cautioned him not to expect a reunion. Even so, Thancred felt a connection with this girl that he had yet to meet. He knew in his heart of hearts what he must do. Exhaling softly, he turned the key and unlocked the door. The chamber was unnervingly ordinary. Where Thancred had expected a dark cell, he found instead a simple, yet all too comfortable-looking bed and a smallish chest of drawers, a desk, and matching chair suitable for study, equipped with a parchment and a quill. The centerpiece of the room was a mighty bookshelf, lined from top to bottom, end to end with impressive tomes. Aside from the lack of windows, one would scarcely have cause to complain. Yet this makeshift cell... Yet this made the makeshift cell all the more unsettling. There was no despair, but nor was there hope to be found. It was simply a place for the God King of Yulmore to keep the Oracle of Light as his prisoner and pet until the end of days. Sitting atop the bed, in the center of the chamber, was a young girl. The young child turned to her unexpected visitor and stared at him with the eyes of crystal. You are? The girl's voice was at once reminiscent and entirely different from the young Isilia's. Another life had been waiting beyond that door, a life of love and hope, of family. Minfilia, it's time to go. As Thancred spoke the name, he saw her smile in the dark, her silhouette against the blinding light. He extended a hand. After a moment's hesitation, the girl took it. This time, I will make it right. Hey, Kef, what up? These pictures are great. I'm glad that they put them in here. That's so cool, man. Casey, yeah, thanks for wasting your points. Yeah, the short stories. This one was awesome. That was nice. So, it basically gave us a quick look at a bit of the past that Thancred lived, a bit of Minfilia's past, and basically how he found Minfilia in the first. It's sick. I love it. I love that they added this extra... I mean, I know most MMOs do this kind of stuff, but it's really cool, man. Thancred's your favorite, Scion? He's a complex one. I feel like he's he's one of the more complicated ones in that it's easy to like him, but it's also easy to sort of just brush over him. This is it, the story. Oh, this one, is it good? Okay, you guys know this one. It's a lot shorter than the other. Well, it's not a lot shorter, but it's a bit shorter than the other one. Okay, let's go. Let's do this one. I think that it'll be hard for me to answer who my favorite is of the Scions, but especially since we finished up Shadowbringers now, Eorzea has moved up the list. She has. I really like Eorzea. Everything we did with her in Shadowbringers was so good, man. I love it. Okay, here we go. Echoes of Delusion. The evening found them at their usual table in the Shiokaze hostelry. Wait, what? That's in Kugane. Though he and his traveling companion had by now become a familiar sight in Kugane, few had any inkling just how odd a pair they were. A dragon slayer, albeit retired, and a dragonette. A dragonette? I don't even know what that is. As well, you had me to get us out of this predicament, Ornkai observed, in that insufferably smug tone of his. And not for the first time. But this, Estinian decided, was one time too many. Face darkening, he snatched a piece of sun-dried squid, known to the locals as surumi, from the plate between them making the diminutive dragon blink. A predicament of your making, your false lead, that caused us needless toil. Tearing off some chewy squid with his teeth, he let out an irritated sigh. Gods, how did it come to this? But the answer he knew all too well. Oh, dragon child? Okay. I like that. No one's more complex than Eorzea. Yeah, man. I don't know if I want to read stories of Eorzea. Let's keep the picture up. It had begun amidst smoke and ash. At the gimlet dark, we had plucked the warrior of light from the jaws of death. Hell yes, dude. I wanted to hear about this. Having borne his stricken comrade to the Ishgardian encampment, he had promptly taken his leave, reasoning that his skill with the lance could be far more used on the battlefield than the infirmary. So, he had turned his steps back towards the fighting, minded to lend the alliance his strength, only to learn that it was no longer needed, for Xenos had withdrawn from the front lines, leaving the Imperial forces defanged and in disarray. Thus had Estinian found himself aimlessly wandering the snow-swept fields of Coerthus, which is where he heard a familiar draconic voice calling out to him, Ornkai. In the past, he had aided the Dragonet in his quest to find his sire's long-lost consort, a journey to the far east, which had, it would seem, given the creature a taste for adventure, and now he wanted Estinian to accompany him on another. I've no interest in playing nursemaid, Estinian replied, in a tone that brooked no discussion, but Ornkai was not to be discouraged. Having inquired as to the Elizan's age, he retorted with a smirk. I've lived tenfold your years. It would seem I am the one who must play nursemaid. In such a manner did their conversation unfold, and a pain began to manifest in Estinian's temples. First niggling, then raging, until driven to the limits of his patience. He had declared with a snarl, I had forsworn the slaying of dragons, but for you, mayhap, I shall make an exception. This said, he had drawn his lance and made as if to thrust at his interlocutor, who duly cheered. Yes, that's the spirit, Ornkai gleefully exclaimed, before proceeding to apprise Estinian of his plans. He had previously heard tell, he explained, of an intriguing legend, that of Seriu, a dragon worshipped in the far east as a benevolent guardian, but he feared in certain corners as a man-eating fiend. I wish to ascertain the truth of the tales. If this dragon devours man-flesh, as some believe, it falls to us to end his reign of terror. So it was that the Azure Dragoon had set forth once more to the far east, a none too willing travelling companion, nor all too willing dragonet. And, through painstaking effort, trudging hither and yon, gathering information, they had learned the truth of the legend, to their mutual disappointment, for the dragon, known as Suryu, was no dragon at all, at least not of the kind they knew, but something more akin to a serpent. And to compound their chagrin, their quest having dragged on far longer than intended, they had found themselves at the limits of their funds. For some days, they were forced to endure empty bellies, but their luck had turned when Ornkai came to the attention of the proprietor of Kokane's most famous hostelry. Like many a Hingan, the woman believed dragons to be bringers of good fortune, and she had offered them board and lodging in exchange for attracting customers. Oh my god, this is good. Hey Tisha, what's up? Edagos, good to see you. And here we are, a spectacle for the drunkards. How ungrateful, Ornkai said, with mock indignance. I find myself less and less inclined to sear your squid. As little as Estinian cared for the dragon's pertness, at the moment he cared less for the dry rice wine without savory accompaniment. Fine, I'm grateful, he managed, resisting the urge to roll his eyes. Now sear me another one, will you? Seemingly placated, Ornkai breathed fire upon the surumi, which released a mouth-watering aroma as it crackled and charred. Estinian allowed it a moment to cool before helping himself to another bite of this strangely addictive snack. Even as he savored the flavor and texture, footsteps rang out from the direction of the tavern's entrance. Welcome to the Shiokaze hostelry, Ornkai cheerily called out to the newly arrived patrons. With a brief shake of his head, Estinian drew breath to offer his own half-hearted greeting, only for the word to die on his lips when he turned and saw two Lalafell maidens standing upon the threshold. Okay, I like where this is going. Hey, Mads, what's up, man? I'm doing really well. We're just having some story time here. There you are! Shrilled the one in the pink kimono. Though she had adopted the local attire, there was no mistake in Taru, the Scion's indomitable receptionist, and beside her, even less mistake in her distinctive robe, was Kryl Baldessian, staring wide-eyed at him. Whatever it was that the Archon saw, it clearly amused her, for she suddenly, racked by paroxysms of poorly stifled laughter. She was suddenly. Okay, I have no idea what that even means. Forgive me, she said tearily, struggling for breath. I had heard that the Azure Dragoon had hung up his lance, but I did not expect that he would take up this serving tray instead. To that assessment, Estinian could offer no retort, and as much as her amusement irked him, above all, he was troubled by the creeping sense that he was about to be drawn into yet another bothersome affair. He turned to Onkai. "'Tis time we went our separate ways, little one. But so long as you remain here, you shan't want for comfort. Fare you well." Just like that, dude. Sparing the visitors no further glance, Estinian picked up his traveling sack, and, with the tip of his lance, swung it over his shoulder and leapt. He shot up to the hostelry's upper level, landing gracefully amidst the startled revelers, who broke out in rapturous applause at what they had assumed must be a performance. Disregarding the ovation, he dashed through the door and out into the night. He knew at once where to bend his steps. Kugane Ohashi. For across the bridge, there lay the rest of Shishu, entry to which was forbidden to all Ijin, save a privileged few. Surely it'd be the last place they would think to look for him. But he had scarcely settled into his spot against the bridge balustrade to let out the haze of the wine and let it clear from his head when, from amongst the passing traffic, the Lalafells appeared again. "You do know they won't let you pass without one of these." Tataru waved a parchment in front of him, bearing Far Eastern script and a crimson seal. An entry permit. Why am I not surprised? But what was surprising was how quickly they had managed to track him. At that moment, a boat plying the channel below chanced to draw near. He did not stop to think, and sprung onto the mast. A few moments and several leaps later, Estinian was taken in the city from the Kugane rooftop. The rooftop of the Kugane castle. A self-satisfied grin upon his face. Let them try and find me here. Absent-mindedly, he withdrew what was left of his surumi from the pocket where it had been he had secreted it, raised it to his mouth, and stared. On a nearby walkway, two Lalafells were emerging, led by a Sekisegumi blade bearing a lantern. What sorcery is this? In that instant, it occurred to Estinian that they may have a good reason to seek him out. The thought quickly faded, however. Perhaps it was the wine, a potent variety sourced from the main island, or perhaps it was simply his nature. But the more they pursued him, the more determined he was to elude them. Just need to steer clear until morning. Thus resolved, he stepped off the rooftop and dropped down. Down to the ground. Dude, everyone runs from Tataru. It's the right thing to do, I think. If you're not the warrior of light. Hey, Dada, what up? Okay. After what seemed like an eternity, the night sky began to take on the grey of dawn. A little longer, and the Kuroboro Maru would leave port and bear Estinian away, beyond the reach of Scion troubles. But even as he allowed himself to hope, the selfsame cheery voice that had haunted him all night rang out. "Anyone would think you were trying to avoid us." You cannot be serious. Groaning inwardly, he turned to face his unrelenting pursuers, his mind racing as he considered his options. It was then that the Baldessian woman fell to one knee, cradling her head. Are you all right?" Tataru crouched beside her companion in a state of alarm. The Archon had plainly overexerted herself during their night-long game of cat and mouse. Unable to stop himself from feeling a measure of culpability, he was about to proffer a hand when Kral's shoulders began to shake with laughter. As poorly stifled as before. God. Oh, Estinian. Never would I have imagined. She made an effort to look at him, but the sight of his face seemingly only to add to her amusement, sending her into further paroxysms. "What's this now? Do you see something from the past?" Tataru asked, her voice dripping with curiosity. Though it had already been Though it was already well on the way to being a warm day, Estinian felt a chill to rival the Coerthan night. He knew that, like the warrior of light in his sail, Kryl was blessed with the echo and could peer into the past through another's eyes. He could not begin to guess which mortifying episode of his life she had witnessed. There were simply too many. Finally composing herself, Kryl stood upright and regarded Estinian with a look of pity. Be at ease. I am not so heartless as to reveal what I saw. Not here. And now, at any rate. Damn you to the bottom of the seventh hell. But enough of that, she continued sweetly. We were hoping to speak with you. If you have a moment. Estinian's shoulders rose and fell as he sighed in resignation. The chase was over. God. Dude. Later that morning, Estinian stood upon the deck of a merchant vessel bound for Radzat-Han. On his way to the Empire, he had been charged with finding, and if possible destroying, an alchemical weapon by the name of Black Rose. Left unchecked, the Garleans would inevitably bring the deadly gas to bear against their enemies, Ishgard among them. The method of his recruitment apart, he could not stand stand idly by while his comrades were thus threatened. Nor could he deny that he was well suited to the task. As he gazed out at the ruby sea, he rested a hand upon the reassuring weight hanging from his waist. A leather pouch heavy with coin. The spoils of some lucrative venture pertaining to Far Eastern legends, according to Tataru. Oh my god. Oh my god. Hey, M82, what up? Mookie, hello. Shrinko, hi. Spoilers? Yeah, of course. Met spoilers. Someone drew a comic of this? Nice. Okay, where were we? Yet another bothersome journey. But at least I shan't want for funds. Reaching into his travel sack, he pulled out a piece of freshly seared surumi, a parting gift from Onkai. He took a bite, making sure to chew it slowly. There was no telling when he would see any more. There he is with his surumi, dude. At around the same time, Tataru and Kryl were sitting at the Shiokaze hostelry, taking refreshments with their new friend Onkai. So tell us, Kryl, Tataru began, her cheeks flushed from the rice wine. What scandalous event from Estinian's past did you see? Like the morning sun peering over the horizon, a coy smile slowly broke on Kryl's lips. I'm sorry. Whatever gave you the impression I saw such a thing? Their boisterous laughter could be heard as far away as the water's edge, but thankfully not beyond. Dude. Oh my god. Dude, she is such a little con. Holy crap. Really? Oh my god. Shame. Of course. Of course someone did this, dude. Obviously someone did this. Oh. Ah, I'm having an echo. Ah. Oh, you're at home alone on a Friday night. I'm having an echo. Oh, God. The hell, dude. I'm having an echo. That shit's awesome. Thank you for that. You think of this every time I do the echo thing? Yeah. Oh, I'm having an echo. Shit. Dude, Lalafelds are the best. They are so good. Okay, we're moving on to the next one. That was awesome. So, I was wondering why Estinian was bothering with all that nonsense he was bothering with. Because he was out there. In enemy territory. It's crazy. It's crazy. Okay. Objective. Oh, this one's called A World Forsaken. Good shit. Let's go. Objective. To record and analyze events surrounding the 8th Umbral Calamity. Based on information extrapolated. So the 8th Umbral Calamity. Extract read from statements and reports made by Sid Garland. Following a series of decisive victories, the former imperial colonies of Doma and Alamigo overthrew their provincial rulers and secured independence from Garlemald. This prompted other occupied territories to rise up against their oppressors and join forces with the Eorzean and Eastern alliances. The Garleans responded by marching the bulk of their troops to Gimlet on the Alamegan border, where the allied armies gathered to repel them. Though peace negotiations were attempted, the differences between the opposing sides proved to be irreconcilable. With open warfare, the only viable recourse. I hate words. I hate words. He should maybe not read this. I'm down to the 5.0, by the way, so... Should he do the dungeon first? It's fine. It's fine. I'm reading it now. I'm gonna read it now. Even if there's something that's... even if there's a spoiler for the dungeon, that means I'm not spoiling myself with the dungeon for the story. This is fine. It's fine. You just think about it the other way around. This is content too. That's content. This is content. It's fine. Let's go. If this can hype me up for the dungeon, hell yes, dude. Let's go. Because we're doing the dungeon. So, against expectation, the well-equipped and highly organized Imperial legions failed to capitalize on their early advantage, allowing the Alliance to stage a counterattack. One possible cause for such ineffectual display on the part of the Garlean troops is the high proportion of conscripted soldiers, who, in the words of Master Sid, lack the conviction required to maximize their combat capabilities. Unfortunately, not programmed to assess such unquantifiable variables, and this theory must therefore be dismissed as mere conjecture. I can, however, state with some degree of certainty that the arrival of the ones known as the Scions of the Seventh Dawn was a critical factor in the Garleans' defeat. The next one is spoilery if you haven't finished 5.0, apparently. If it's about Emmett and about his past, then obviously it's pretty spoilery. So, after the Empire's withdrawal, Sid Garland and his Ironworks colleagues, including the elusive Nero Scava, dude, I want to see more of Nero, traveled to the Burn on the Othardian subcontinent to bolster the field generators at Seriu's Wall in preparation for the Garleans' next offensive. They set about their work, unaware of the events unfolding elsewhere that would change the course of history, until they received the first report, which, according to Master Sid, was unusually brief. The Garleans have deployed a powerful new weapon on the Eorzean front. We tried to contact our comrades at Ralga's Reach, but received no reply. Despite lacking several essential details, the message was entirely accurate. The reason the sender had been unable to communicate with said comrades was simple. They had been annihilated by Black Rose, a poisonous gas developed by the Garleans. Shit, man. This ingenious weapon halts the flow of aether within the organic beings, causing near immediate cessation of respiratory functions. Being highly potent and capable of rapid dispersal across a wide area, the majority of the settlements in nearby Alamigo were almost entirely depopulated in the aftermath. Wow, that's a word, dude. Depopulated. Jesus. Wow. Wow. It's... okay. Contemporary reports state that the damage extended far beyond the Alliance-held regions, such as the Black Shroud and Thanalan, to several Imperial territories, resulting in significant loss of life. As my present configuration is only equipped with basic audiovisual receptors, I must draw my conclusions from limited and, I am compelled to admit, unreliable sources of information. At the time of the Black Rose's deployment, I was otherwise engaged deep within Ogamoro, and was unable to make detailed observations at the weapon's effects. The yellow-plumed creature that was accompanying me appeared to sense something at the approximate moment that the gas was released, gazing into empty space with an expression that mortals describe as perturbed. Yellow-plumed creature. This one's much longer than the other one, by the way. Objective: to record and analyze events surrounding the 8th Umbral Calamity based on information acquired from Sid Garland. Master Garland has made numerous attempts to initiate... duck, yeah. Duck. It's probably a duck, yeah. Of course, dude, it's always the ducks. It's fine if it's spoilery, dude. It's fine. Because we're going to do the dungeon anyway, and then it's spoilery the other way, you know? If we do the dungeon first, then we're going to spoil from the story. It's fine. Think about it like that. Master Garland's made numerous attempts to initiate conversation with me, despite my current vessel being no more than a simplistic automaton conceived as a plaything, lacking any oratory mechanisms with which to respond. These utterances, though made in a state of obvious intoxication, provided me with invaluable data. While the individual recordings contain a wide range of observations, many are superfluous to my investigation, so I have compiled only those I deem relevant. Black Rose wrought immeasurable destruction to organic life forms, resulting in widespread environmental upheaval. The ambient aether ceased to flow along its normal channels and stagnated, rendering the land barren and uninhabitable. Inevitably, the wild imbalance of natural energies affected neighboring regions and, in some cases, led to the sudden, unpredictable alterations in flora and fauna. Overnight, the crops on which man had relied for sustenance became toxic, further increasing the death toll. In the aftermath of these unprecedented disasters, the communities formed by these sentient beings fell into disarray, and all sorts of societal organization, from small settlements to entire nations, were abandoned as individuals struggled desperately to avoid annihilation. Oh, it could be Alpha and Omega, yeah. That's right. But he can't talk because, yeah. Yeah, Omega is that little... So at the end of the Deltascape or Alphascape or whatever that shit was called, those raids we did in Stormblood, at the end of it, for those that didn't see it, they left together on a journey, and you can still find them out in the world. We found them twice already out in the world. It's Alpha, the little chocobo, so that's obviously the yellow plumed thing, and Omega is like a tiny little robot Omega, I suppose. Artist, what up? What are we reading? Short stories. They're from the shadows. What are they called? Tales from the Shadows. Shadowbringers short stories that tie in with the lore of 5.0 and the end game. Hey, Heapim, what up? You just caught up from the videos? Welcome, welcome. It did not take long for the cascade and environmental repercussions to be felt in Garlean territory. Due to the aftereffects of Black Rose, the ceruleum that had once supported daily life in the Empire and powered its Magitech armies failed to combust. The machines duly fell silent, bereft of energy required to set them in motion. The creatures that escaped the initial devastation were thrust into battle for survival. Among them, those belonging to supposedly civilized races were particularly quick to turn on their brethren in a bid to seize control of land and resources. While they attempted to justify these wanton acts of violence with a range of superficially logical explanations, it's my assessment that greed and desperation were the primary motivating factors behind their actions. Master Sid and his colleagues frequently referred to the situation as a quagmire, though in a figurative rather than literal sense. Much like an actual quagmire, it threatened to pull mankind into an inescapable predicament. Correct interpretation of the audio data recorded at the time is dependent on the accurate comprehension of this metaphorical expression. The mortals who found themselves in this quagmire were no longer governed or protected by social conventions or societal norms, instead reverting to more primitive way of life, closer to those referred as beastkin. However, certain groups of sentient beings were reluctant to accept this descent into savagery, with Garlean Ironworks being one such example. Yeah, it is super cool lore. Wasn't that Omega just a trinket? It was like they made it, but they, I don't know, if I'm not mistaken, they sort of gave it a little bit of they gave it enough moving parts that, and I might be wrong with this, the real Omega put himself in there. Is that, oh, there, Mari just said it. Yeah. Exactly. So we didn't, it's like not official, but I guess this makes it official, right? Its members expended considerable time and effort in largely unsuccessful attempts to bring an end to numerous conflicts that had erupted. In addition, they hunted down and reprimanded those who sought to profit from the desperation of their fellow survivors, and offered a safe haven to the exploited. While their deeds earned them the support of many like-minded individuals, the number of comrades gained paled in comparison to those lost in the days which followed. I recorded one particular incident in which a Lalafallen engineer was carried back to headquarters after being mauled by a carnivorous beast while overseeing the digging of a well. Despite the treatment administered by trained chirurgeons, his wounds were beyond healing, and his vital signs began to fade. As he lay dying, one Ironworks member in particular, a Rugadan male, considered to be stricken with a Lalafel's oh, wait, hold on. This is not going to fit with the... let's not play that song. Oh my god. This is Biggs and Wedge, by the way. As he lay dying, one Ironworks member, in particular, a Rugadan male, considered to be stricken with Lalafel's closest friend, refused to leave his bedside, gripping the patient's limp hand and whispering words of encouragement. Appeared to revive him for a few brief moments. Drawing on his final reserves of stamina, the diminutive engineer demanded that his counterpart live on and produce offspring to continue his legacy. To this, the larger man responded with a trembling voice. "It's time you started a family yourself." Though that was, regrettably, not a realistic prospect. Smiling, the Lalafell replied, "Sorry, but no one will ever compare to her." Those were his final words. What? It's so sad, dude. That was Biggs and Wedge. But this isn't real? Is this real? Is this canon? This is the alternate timeline I prevented? I thought so. Yes, this was the one this is the one. That's what I thought, because it said that the shroud was being destroyed and Thanalan was being destroyed, yeah. Shit, that's it. Why don't I hear this shit? It didn't happen. Yeah, we saw. This is the Exarch. This is where the Crystal Exarch initially came. Yeah, exactly. God. It happened. I know it's real, but it's like, it's not our real. So, I know that's such a bad way, dude. It's such a bad way of looking at it. The Lalafell's death prompted an emotional response from my feathered associate, who pressed his tear-stained cheek against the lifeless body. Sometime later, once Master Sid and his colleagues had finally exhausted their supply of tears, they gathered for a lengthy discussion, their expressions growing ever more despondent as the talks continued. You must keep in mind that we saw all of this and we heard about Sid and him and his engineers. They were the ones that worked for... We heard it. Decades and centuries. The work that they did, they started it and they didn't even live to finish it. Dude, oh my god, dude. I can't, it's so sad. Hey Mugandai, what's up, man? They eventually arrived at the conclusion that they lacked the means to restore their shattered world, with the only viable option being to entrust future generations with the knowledge that they had accumulated in the hopes that their successors may one day find a solution. This was met with some resistance, however, as many expressed disapproval of the idea of forsaking these in the present day in order to save a world they would never live to see. Unable to deny this, Master Sid simply nodded and said, "Even so, our sacrifice will not be for naught." With that, Garlean Ironworks found what I believe to be its true purpose. Objective: to continue recording and analyzing events surrounding the 8th Umbral Calamity. Because we didn't actually have the 8th Umbral Calamity, it was prevented, so. I haven't done the dungeon, I realize there's going to be spoilers, but I said I'm fine with it. In other words, I don't even know what the dungeon is. But what I said was, if I do the dungeon, it's going to spoil the story. If I do the story, it's going to spoil the dungeon. Let's rather just do it this way around, because we're reading the stories already. The researchers of Garlean Ironworks continue to investigate the process by which the Black Rose, possessed of destructive power far exceeding its creator's expectations, triggered the 8th Umbral Calamity. They believed that that understanding the nature of this catastrophe would reveal a means by which it might be averted entirely. The aim was to change the past, to create an alternate reality in which calamity never occurred, a feat rendered conceivable by their knowledge of advanced technologies of fallen civilizations. However, many of those who would bear the burden of continued existence in a world ravaged by Black Rose failed to see this as a viable stratagem. Such responses were consistent with my projections, as it's generally the primary objective of all life forms to secure their own survival in the here and now. Many of Sid's followers either refused to cooperate or expressed a desire to leave the Ironworks altogether. Certain former employees went as far as to appropriate equipment and supplies by force before heading out into the wilderness to fend for themselves. Although the vast majority opposed Master Sid's radical proposition, a select few remained to lend their assistance. Research into the 8th Umbral Calamity continued, aided by experts in the fields of magic and etherical science. During this period, one loyal scholar noted that while preventing the disaster may not solve all the world's problems, and all the problems that had afflicted the world in the past, the one dubbed the Warrior of Light would still be alive. The various members of the team each had their own personal connection with the deceased, and the notion of creating an alternate past in which the hero survived the calamity met with unanimous approval. It's impossible to discern the manner in which this theory affected the motivation of the Ironworks staff and their associates, or whether some external factor triggered a sudden increase in their mental faculties, but the fact that they eventually succeeded in unraveling the mysteries surrounding the 8th Umbral Calamity is a matter of record. In addition, by presenting their plans as an attempt to save the Warrior of Light rather than a bid to rewrite history, they were able to gain support from survivors of many different species and subgroups. Representatives from various settlements came to donate resources and foodstuffs to Garlean Ironworks, despite possessing barely enough to sustain themselves. Many were also acquainted with the Warrior of Light, some even claiming to have been beneficiaries of the late hero's acts of philanthropy. A semi-aquatic creature known as a Namazu, who had arrived bearing donations, imparted information apparently gleaned from premonitory dreams. Premonitory dreams? The following is an extract of his recorded testimony. The world was never in such a ruinous state in the vision sent to me by the Big One. No. Sagetsu, the Enlightened, said that the future I witnessed was part of another history, a different chain of events with no 8th Umbral Calamity at all, whatever that means. It remains to be seen whether this is anything more than the nonsensical ramblings of an anthropomorphic catfish, but I shall store it in my databanks for future analysis. Over time, support for the Ironworks continued to grow, their cause finding allies in the most unexpected of quarters. Memorably, during a routine mission transporting research materials, one of their vessels was ambushed by bandits, only to be rescued by an immense airship containing a golden-haired hero female claiming to be a sky pirate. I remember her from the Void Ark quest lines. She's reported to have made the following declaration. My mother was once snatched from the jaws of death by this champion of yours. Oh my god, it's her mother. As her successor and Queen of the Skies, I mean to see that debt repaid in full. God, that's so cool, dude. Quest of the Dungeon is by the time you hear this in the Crystarium. Thank you. I'll definitely check that out. I mean, we're going to do it, obviously. Instances of the Ironworks representatives being extricated from perilous situations were abnormally frequent. Their apparent saviors, including multiple non-humanoid entities, in one such example, an emissary who was attacked and thrown overboard while crossing the Ruby Sea, reported waking upon the shore of a nearby island with a vague recollection of having been borne to safety by a large beast, possibly Shilonian or serpentine in nature. Dude, holy crap. Come on. That's so cool. So all the friends we made in Stormblood and all the other expansions, like Heavensward, we just heard the Sky Pirates, they come in and they're helping out. It's all coming back. Hey, what's up? In a similar incident, an ill-equipped messenger would have fallen to his death while traversing the peaks of Solmal, were it not for the intervention of a colossal white-winged creature, later identified as a dragon. According to the official report, there was a brief exchange in which the Dravanian rescuer expressed its disinterest in the affairs of man, particularly his insatiable thirst for conflict, before disappearing into the clouds. It must be noted that due to a lack of independent eyewitnesses or material evidence, this account remains unverified. Objective: to continue to record and analyze the events surrounding the 8th Umbral Calamity. With admirable dedication for a mortal, Master Sid continued to labor until the end of his natural lifespan. Wow. The years of painstaking research clearly took their toll, however. One day, as he penned the final words of his grand theory, I observed his hand quiver, as if the weight of his quill had at last defeated him. Breathing a weary sigh, he turned to Master Nero, who made the same shrugging gesture that I've observed on many occasions before, saying, "Well, it certainly took you long enough." Previous analysis of Master Nero's behavior patterns indicates that this was meant as a compliment. though Master Sid's exasperated expression appeared to suggest it was not received as such. Be that as it may, a brief smile, which subsequently crossed his lips, led me to believe that he understood his counterpart's intent. That's so sad, dude. Slowly rising to his feet, he then shuffled towards a well-worn device referred to as a boil master and poured coffee into 2 metallic containers, passed one to Master Nero. They duly raised the receptacles and brought them together in a percussive toast-in motion, a ritual I've seldom witnessed. There having been little cause for celebration, the pair sipped their drinks and, for once, Master Nero refrained from expressing his distaste for the brew. A noteworthy anomaly. Master Sid then turned his gaze to the stack of papers on the desk and initiated the following exchange. So, you think this mad scheme of ours will ever come to fruition? Only time will tell, Garland. Lest you forget, the road to ruin is lined with good intentions, which your young proteges have in abundance. We can but hope that they do a better job of saving the world than we did. Indeed, it is in their hands now. God. Shit. No further words were exchanged, and my senses yielded no indication as to the thoughts which occupied the pair's minds. Hey, what's up? You blame me, Mugandai? Wolfrey? Hey, Adagos? What's up? What did I do? Hello? Yes, I take full responsibility. And yes, Rezone, that was Reisfelger earlier. Absolutely. You checked the Omega cutscene when Alpha leaves the OMG, with the OMG, and they just said that Alpha might have acquired a soul because we could hear their voice, while the OMG said, we built it while we were resting, thinking it might be useful figuring out strategies or something. Not so much use now, I suppose. Oh, man. Damn. That's sick. It's like, there's so much more world behind the world we see when we play in the game. There's so much more lore behind the lore we are spoon-fed while playing the game. Hey, Artful, Husnerd, it's good to see you both. I'm to blame? Absolutely, dude. I mean, there was a time when I thought it wasn't worth doing it. It wasn't worth taking that final step or making that final move. But when I thought of your downfall and I thought of the glee I would feel at it, well, the choice was clear. The choice was in fact clear. So yes, I am to blame. Absolutely. No further words were exchanged. My senses yielded no indication as to the thoughts which occupied the pair's minds. So, as they stood in silence, I attempted to form my own answer to Sid's question. I could by this time emulate the cognitive processes of organic beings, as I had done on one particular occasion many years ago, in the moments immediately prior to the irreversible dissolution of my previous vessel. Oh shit. Oh yes, there you go, dude. With what might be termed wakeful eyes. Oh shit. I reviewed the reports made by the Ironworks members following their investigations into the Crystal Tower, the mechanical primal known as Alexander, and the interdimensional rift, the findings of which were instrumental in formulating the plan to alter the past. Thus did I discover that each of these missions, had one common element. They ended with a key figure entering a form of self-imposed exile, not unlike a deep slumber. Oh my god, I didn't even think of that. Holy crap, that's true. Yeah. At times, such as these, when one is to be separated from one's companions, whether by sleep or by death, there's a phrase which I've found to be particularly fitting. Good night. Holy shit. And after the night comes the morning, as the sun rises to greet a new day. While it may already be too late to mend this dying world, there are those who would strive to create a place where the sun will shine again, not for their own sake, but for those in the past that may well be saved. I think this is what most mortals called hope. It is beautiful. Shit. That's... Jeez, God. Oh, this one's heavy, man. That's... It's good to see you awake, Grahatia. Yeah, oh my god. This one was rough. Oh god. Okay. Okay. Are you reading now or just talking? I was just talking. Hasn't hurt. But what happened with your raid? I'm assuming you guys were raiding, huh? The way Lumen just spasmed with his mouse just shows how he appreciated it. Yeah, of course. You did the same with this. God. Of course you did. Of course you did. Okay, here we go. You raided the shit out of Shiva Unreal. Kiak didn't adjust. Nearly killed Shiva repeatedly. She actually killed us even more repeatedly. Wait, okay. Okay, so this is the big one, by the way. This one has to do with Emmett Selk. I'm ready. Ooh. Ooh. How do you feel about the goth chick shouting at you constantly? Are you asking me? Who's shouting at me? Who's shouting what? Calyptogina, what up? At the end of Shadowbringers, Emmett Selk claimed that the human race would never sacrifice half their lives for the other. But the survivors of the 8th Umbral Calamity sacrificed everything for the past. It's true. But you did hear that it was a very small portion of them. So he was still right. However, there was hope. There was hope. There was hope. There was still hope. Which is great. It's awesome. Okay. So, we started with Emmett Selk. We started with this one. And because of that, we'll start with this song as well. Alright, here we go. Okay. This is the last of the short stories. Through his eyes. In a time long forgotten, men and gods were one and the same. And upon the star which was their home, men ruled supreme over the corporeal world, within and without which existed an ethereal realm. Throughout the ages, this realm has been called by many names. But in the beginning, it was known as the Underworld. The place to which departed souls returned, as water flows to the sea and rises to the sky before raining down upon the land once more. The Underworld was a fundamental part of the circle of life, and for this reason, it was regarded at once with familiarity and reverence by men who, despite their godlike powers, could not claim dominion over it. Wise though they were, they could not catch only fleeting glimpses of the realm, channel but a sliver of its power, and do naught to control its ceaseless flow.
Imagine stealing content while in the wrong category. Subscribe to www.twitch.tv/superkayak.
Super kayak. I'm okay with you advertising in your resubscription because that's 26 months, man. Listen, it's not the wrong category. It's not the wrong category. And this is all Final Fantasy content. We are appreciating it together. But hey, dude, I appreciate you and the 26 months. I hope you didn't pull your raid team down too far or too much or anything like that, because it sounded like you had a tumultuous time. Anyway, guys, this one's going to be good. Amarok music? I know it's coming, don't worry. Hey, Teppo Man, what up? It was a resub. And it's Kiak. He's a mod on the channel. He also did the emotes that are on this channel. He's our resident artist and memer. He's also, well, Supreme Kayak. It's what he is. It's what he does. Anyway, let's carry on. Thank you, Kiak. Thank you so much, dude. However, among those who abided in that age, there were those chosen few who possessed an affinity with the underworld, and among their number, one stood tall. Another idyllic evening had descended upon Amarot. Citizens strolled carelessly along the streets of the gleaming capital, identical black-robed figures bathed in gentle torchlight. Some would while the night away in agreeable company, others retire early to their beds. The illumination served equally well for both. But he had chosen to spend the time alone at the park, reclining upon the manicured lawn. The cowl of his robe had fallen back to reveal locks of white hair, which framed the unique red mask covering the upper half of his face. The sole item among his apparel that was his and his alone. To see him lazing there, most would have assumed he was simply gazing up at the stars, or perhaps the glittering towers that seemed to reach for them. The sights that were reflected in his eyes, however, were a far cry from any seen by most men. What he beheld was the aether that comprised all things, radiating life, From the depths of the land to the heights of the firmament, its lights shone bright. Here and there, lives that had served their purpose drifted upon the current before suddenly plunging down into the underworld. That he could behold these wonders was not a wonder in itself. Many were blessed with the sight, yet very few indeed were strong enough in the gift as him. As strong in the gift as him. As a man focused his gaze upon the object of his interest, he needed but direct his attention towards the aether to behold all the lives born on the currents. So acute was his vision, he could make out not only the soul, the heart of life, but also discern subtle differences in the hue of each, telling individual lives apart, and by virtue of his transcendent skill, he had often been likened to a denizen of the underworld. For a while he continued gazing up at the sky, watching the dance of aether alone with his thoughts, until the soft rustling of grass announced the approach of another. Noticing this, he shut his eyes tight, as if to will away the din. But the steps only drew nearer, growing louder and louder, before finally becoming a voice overheard. I heard the tidings. Congratulations, Hades. Or should I say, the Honourable Emmett Salk, of the convocation of the 14. Shit. Okay, here we go, dude. This is already getting real. Hey, Queen of Hearts, good to see you. Hello, hello, hello. If I pretend not to notice, perhaps he'll leave me in peace, he thought without much hope. And, as expected, but no less to his disappointment, the owner of the voice did not make to leave. Resigned, he grudgingly rolled over and heaved himself to his feet. Having repositioned his cowl, he addressed the grinning visitor with an unconcealed displeasure. There is naught to congratulate. I merely filled a void, one which, I would remind you, existed because you refused the honor. Come now. It went to the candidate best suited to the office. You find practical use for that which you see, while I enjoy seeing for its own sake. And what does that say about your suitability for your own office? Perhaps I shall raise the subject with the Hall of Rhetoric. As he said the words, he glared daggers through his mask, but the threat idle, as they both knew, served only to elicit a snort of amusement from the chief of the Bureau of the Architect, his close friend, Hythlodaeus. Hythlodaeus, there we go. So Hythlodaeus is the one that we met, for those that maybe remember last night, sitting in the final room we visited in Amarut. He's the guy that saw us and our partner in crime, both, us and Ardbert. It was pretty great. He's the one who basically dropped the bomb on us of us being the same person, but from different shards. Dude, Big Chance, what's up, man? Yeah, holy shit, it's exciting being done with 5.0. It really is. Kiak, enjoy the art, man. Enjoy the art. It's super exciting, man. Attired in black robe and a white mask, the man looked entirely unremarkable. Yet like Hades, he was eminently gifted with the ability to behold the underworld. As a matter of fact, were it purely a question of vision, his was the keener of the two. Precious little escaped his eyes, which could discern essence and appearance as plainly as night and day. This made him amply qualified for the highest office of the Bureau of the Architect, the institution which oversaw the creation of concepts, and incurably smug. Irked by Hythlodaeus' unshakable good cheer, he snapped. Was there something else? And immediately regretted it when he saw the man's grin broaden. As a matter of fact, yes. Have you informed a certain someone of your appointment? Hardly necessary. The memorandum will see to it. If the gossips in the street haven't already, news pertaining to the 14 is wont to spread quickly. Were you to ask my opinion, I would tell you such a monumentous message warrants a personal delivery. Shall I ascertain our friend's whereabouts? It'll take but a moment. I did not ask for your opinion, nor less your help. I understand you have pressing tasks and would not keep you from them. Okay. For the first time since Hythlodaeus' arrival, the grin faded from his lips. The tilt of the man's head, all but asking how Hades could have known. And, though he was certain he would regret answering the unspoken question, in the end he found himself yielding to the interminable silence. With a sigh, he continued. A short while ago, you received a visitor from the words of La Habrea. The words of La Habrea. Okay, this invariably means you've been tasked with an inspection of considerable import, and by rights, should not have time to spend in idleness. That you should seek me out at such a juncture suggests you have a consultation or, the mind boggles, a request. For a moment, Hythrodaeus said nothing, as if mulling over the words. Then his shoulders began to shake with laughter. You wound me, old friend. I merely chanced to notice you lying here and wished to offer my congratulations. As he continued, his voice took an impish tone. And I dare say, given your new responsibilities, you've even less time than me to spend in idleness. Of course, you're never one to rouse yourself, save when you deemed it a matter worthy of your attention. Though said in jest, the uninvited observation did not improve his mood. You've offered your congratulations, he said testily. Is there naught else? If there's naught else, I shall be on my way. Seeing him turn to leave, Hythrodaeus hastily changed his tone. Wait. As you say, I have a consultation for you. And a request. Will you not hear me out, most eminent Emet-Selk? Look at that beautiful picture. They're talking about me, by the way? Yeah. Well, I mean, wait. Which part? An immortal bird? Kiak? Super Kiak. An immortal bird. Someone wants Kiak here? Why do you want Kiak here? Hades repeated as they made their way through the restricted area of the Bureau of the Architect. Hythrodaeus nodded. To be precise, it's not a living being, but a magic woven in the likeness of a bird. One possessed of the puissant healing powers. And it befits a masterwork of the words of La Habrea. It's a thing of beauty. I don't doubt it, so what then is the problem? Oh, they're talking about the shoe bill? What? Yeah, let's keep reading. Oh, okay. They obviously talk. This must be the shoe bill, yeah. Phoenix? Nah, shoe bill. Okay. As I said, it's not a living being. The concept proposed was a magic in avian guise. With this in mind, Hythrodaeus stretched out a hand to the enormous gate that stood before them. Soundlessly, the towering doors swung open, and Hades found himself wincing at the ear-rending cry that emanated from within. Furrowing his brow, he stepped across the threshold to be greeted with the sight of a magnificent bird. Its plumes fairly afire, circling high in the vaulted hall. Having marked the creature's undeniable beauty, it took him but another moment to identify the problem, an unmistakable light shining in its heart. His breath caught in his throat. A soul? How? Through their mastery of creation magics, men could weave anything into existence, anything they could imagine. They could bring forth anything, that is, except a soul. As Hades well knew, souls spontaneously manifested within creatures that were born in accordance to the laws of nature. It was a gift from the star itself, long held to be impossible to recreate. No artificial being, no matter how subtly sculpted in the image of nature, could possess a soul. Such creations occupied a separate classification known as arcane entities. There was an accident, Hythrodaeus began. During the concept's examination, a drifting soul merged with it. A soul burdened with regret, judging by the being's behavior. It rages against the pull of the underworld. As he listened, Hades kept his gaze fixed on the creature, which flew about in a frenzy. No sooner would it dash itself against the wall in an explosion of broken feathers than it would heal itself and repeat the grisly feat. God, this self-destructive dance unfolded again and again, with the creature occasionally giving vent to its overflowing magical reserves, or fury, as it seemed to him, as a fiery breath. Witnessing the excruciating display, his thoughts poured forth unbidden from his lips. Consumed by the fear of death, it thrashed blindly about. It will know only pain and suffering and inflict the same upon others. A pitiful existence. Such moving empathy. It's as if you wore the feathers yourself. He waved a dismissive hand. Yes, yes. But what do you intend to do with it? Masterwork or no, we cannot leave it as it is. There, Hythrodaeus turned to face him, that irritating smile having returned, and again, he knew the pang of regret. As it is immortal, after a fashion, we have not the ability to return it to the Underworld. Our efforts would only cause it pain. Nay, we require the services of a powerful mage, and I know of none more powerful than you. Once more he found himself glaring daggers at his friend, whose grin had become broader than ever. But rather than give him the satisfaction of a complaint, he decided that he would make a debt of it. Without another word, he focused his mind, and as he did, his silhouette wavered and danced. Then all of a sudden, like a shadow lengthening, his form began to swell. Through the thrum of the gathering aether, he heard Hythrodaeus remark, "Never ceases to impress me." He knew well what his friend beheld, the unbridled power of the Underworld pouring forth into his being. In such moments, he felt as though he was one with its flow. The mages were plentiful. Not even among the rest of the 14 could one find another capable of wielding such power. Oh my god. It's pretty awesome to hear that Emet-Selch was the most powerful. and the debt they're talking about here, him talking to us. Ere long his transformation was complete, and Hythlodaeus was left to crane his neck up at him. Indeed, there is no better candidate. Allow me to congratulate you again, Emet-Selch. He let out a quiet breath, a sigh mingled with laughter. Then he faced the bird and set about his task. Hey, Kratzel. I'm getting too immersed, but keep doing it. Thank you, man. Thank you. I try. God. Your Radiance. Your Radiance? The voice rumbled from a distance. Impatient and insistent, drowsily he opened his eyes and, through the haze of sleep, inadvertently focused upon the flow of aether. The habit of aeons. Unlike aeons ago, however, there was no brilliant shine to greet his sight, but a wan, sickly glow. A guttering candle, where once a signal flame blazed. His face reflexively contorted in disgust. Gathering his scattered thoughts, he finally remembered where he was. Dozed off in the chair again? Ah, the joys of old age. Your Radiance, it's the appointed hour. The voice rumbled from right before him. He cast a bleary gaze towards the sound to see a young man, tall and strapping and golden-haired, regarding him anxiously. Though he was still well shy of his 20th name day, the crease which adorned his forehead added years to his grandson's appearance. This body's grandson, he corrected himself. Then he remembered. The boy, Varus, had been eager to report on his recent suppression of unrest of some forsaken province or other. Scarcely a matter warranting a formal audience, let alone rousing me for. Perhaps the boy had finally scraped together enough courage to crow about his accomplishments. Perhaps he was put to it by his ambitious courtiers. Regardless, it was naught but the feeble plotting of malformed creatures. Wearily, he just called his grandson a malformed creature. He hauled himself to his feet and shuffled past the youth towards the door. He'd barely taken half a dozen steps, however, when Varus found his tongue. What is it about me that displeases you so? God. He stopped at the unexpected address, casting a glance over his shoulder. I can just see Emet-Selch, like, slouching, towards the door and, looking back at him in that super disinterested way of his. God. He saw the boy wearing an expression of pure anguish, and in that moment, he looked every bit as young as he was. To let the question spill forth, his frustration towards his grandsire must be great indeed. After a moment's pause, he replied under his breath, Your body. What? The boy's face a picture of confusion, but he offered not a word more, turning away and slowly taking his leave of the room. As he made his way to the audience chamber, a self-deprecating smile rose to his lips. The Garleans are known. Oh my god. Wait, shit. Oh my god. It's Giles. The grandson is Giles, right? It's Varys. Varys, the Varys we know. I didn't even realize. Reading it, I didn't even realize. It's Giles. It's the guy with the ugly, hideous face. Of course his body would repulse him. It repulses me too. God, I love it. Oh my god. Okay. I love this shit, man. The Garleans are known for their large frames. The body he wore was by no means exceptional in that regard. Nor was it that of the woman he took for his wife. Yet their firstborn son was a prodigiously tall and robust specimen, unprecedented among his kind. Jeez, he really was quite tall and robust. So he is a malformed creature. It's true. I actually agree with him here. The boy grew. As he grew, his physique was held in awe and admiration by all. I'd love to see what he looked like in his prime, dude. Because we seen him in the... We saw him. We know he's gone now. In the... in the twilight years of his life. He was old and sort of feeble. It's sad, you know? Anyway. As the boy grew, his physique was held in awe and admiration by all. Though to him it was a source of great vexation. In the end, they were all just malformed creatures. Feeble, frail, and foolish. Thrashing blindly about in their fleeting, fragmented lives, repeating the same mistakes over and over again. Never could they replace his brethren, yet, in spite of himself, when he cradled the newborn in his arms and stroked that downy hair, he couldn't help but hope. For what? He could not be certain, but he hoped nonetheless. It made little difference in the end, for his son had succumbed to some absurd illness and returned to the Underworld long before his time. God. Not without leaving behind a legacy, however. A living, breathing, and ever-present reminder of that momentary lapse. God, that's so sad, dude. This guy went through way too much shit. At length, his frail body brought him to his destination. He paused before the door, took a breath, and shut his eyes tight, as if to will away the din. You know what that means? Xenos is going to develop Giles as he gets older too. Oh yeah, probably. Probably. This was fantastical. Guys, thank you for joining for these short stories. This was actually so cool.